So welcome. It's 3 o'clock GMT and 10 o'clock EST, and we're joined today by Steve Johnson from Under 10 Consulting, who spoken at BOSS a couple of times, but most recently last year when he talked about product management and the way it's been going, and asked the question, have we leaned too far? But just before we start, exciting news from our end. We have two new people with us today. So welcome, Tanya. You can speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Tanya's joined us to sort out or get the whole company organised, I think, is the brief. We haven't worked out what her job title is yet, but that's what she's been doing. And
CEO might be a good title.
CEO would be a start. Yeah, I think we probably need one of those. And Joe's been doing marketing and yeah, all sorts of things. So he's been here for 10 days and wrote his first blog post yesterday. So good stuff. Steve, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
I would love to know why you hate Eric Ries.
Well, I've never actually met Eric Ries. I think there's a lot of goodness in Lean Startup and also Ash Maurya's book, Running Lean. The thing that I get concerned about in the Lean movement is there seems to be a fundamental belief that we start with product and then go discover customers for it. And I've always found it's easier to find technology for people you know than it is to find people for technology you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I love Eric. I mean, I think he is as an individual is a brilliant guy. I mean, really nice. And we spent some time together, both at Business of Software, but also when he was over when he launched the Lean Startup book. And,
very true. And I quoted him from the Business of Software conference from a couple of years ago in my talk. In many ways, Lean Startup is a really good primer on product management. And I think what I've seen like deployed, if you will, is entrepreneurs are discovering product management under the name Lean Startup.
Yes, I agree.
Taking a methodical point of view through each of the aspects of a business. And as I talked about at our conference, my challenge is to get product managers to look beyond the software or beyond the hardware to the whole product, which I think in many ways the Lean Startup community has embraced, because they're looking at creating a business as opposed to creating a product. So all that's good stuff. But the thing I've been railing against for 20 years is the presumption that we start with a product. Look, we've invented a thing. Now let's go find people who might want this thing. And even the language of it, you know, customer discovery, suggests that it's just a question of going out and finding customers who already have the needs that our product has decided to address. I got a call just a couple of weeks ago from a fellow who said, we finished our product and we need your help discovering customers.
Was that a long call?
Yeah. And you know, my orientation is well. In fact, just last week I had a meeting with a friend of mine, Tom Luker, and he said, well, we could do this tech and this tech and this tech. And I went, hang on. Let's start with the personas. And I wrote down the 3 personas we were trying to address, and I started writing down the problems that they were having. And he said, you know, I've heard you talk about personas before, but I've never seen you start the product at the persona. I always think persona is like some trick, you know, when reality is you start with the persona and you write down your problems, and that's going to determine what product you build, product and services. And it was just in working with Tom, who is a developer, it was just a fascinating, just an entirely different point of view. that I would start with people and he would start with product.
You've got to do that sometimes, though, haven't you? You've got to.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go out in the world and say, hey, how's life? What's your problem? People say, well, my wife and I are having some real issues in the bedroom, and it's just like, whoa, let's focus this on something I'm likely to be able to address.
Yeah, no, okay, and I agree. I mean, and I think Eric himself would be one of the first people to say, and I was teasing you when I
I know you
asked
are.
the question. Eric, I think, is one of the first people to recognise how many different ways people have taken the idea and changed it. And I think, in a sense, this is one of the challenges that you have with a viral idea. I mean, a viral idea is something that is easily spread and can replicate widely, but also as it replicates, it changes.
Mm-hmm.
If there was only one version of the common cold, we would have probably solved that challenge by now. But
Indeed.
the reality is, every time someone catches a cold and then passes it on, it's a slightly different version. And
Right.
I do agree. I think there are some people have taken. Well, a lot of people have taken books away and not read them. When
Yeah,
Eric
the
came over and did his book launch, we had 600 copies of those
Mhm.
of the book that we gave to people that attended. Um, I would be really curious to know the number of those that's been read cover to cover.
Right.
Um,
Oh, yeah, probably, 3. The rule, of course, on business books is you read the first third, and then you basically get the idea, and then you tell all your friends you read the book.
yeah,
And you know what? For a lot of business books, that's actually the right answer. You read the first third, you've got it, and then the remaining 2/3 is the same thing repeated again using different words.
yes. I mean, this is one of the problems with publishing, isn't it?
Right.
Is that, I mean, I think most authors that submit a book for publishing find that the publisher comes back and says, "That's great, but can you bulk it up?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, there are the obvious. I mean, there are some people that just produce far too much and it has to be cut down. But I mean, generally, the challenge is building that idea out. And one of the things that we've been talking about here, only half jokingly, is um, trying to find a way of getting people to value a business book in a different way. The value of a book is a function of the ideas it contains, but
Mm-hmm.
also an inverse function of the amount of time it takes to read it.
Good
Um,
point. Good
so the
point.
shorter it is, if we could do 20-page business books that had cracking ideas, I think there's a market for that, and it's not a traditional publishing thing, but people are short of time, and sometimes you want the nice stories and the narrative
Mhm.
and the endless examples and things, and sometimes you just want some really good, solid ideas and advice. So
Right.
we
But
may come back to that one.
isn't that now called a website?
Yes.
I can't remember who it was. Nope, not going to come to me. I remember reading a few years ago about web design. The the person I was following on a blog said, don't write posts, write articles. And I've really embraced that on my website. I mean, I try to put, everything in one piece, and yeah, you can't really, you can't scan that perhaps. But instead of a 250 to 300 to 400 page blog post, I'm typically doing, I mean words. I'm typically doing 700 to 1200 words, and that's enough for one idea, fully formed, with a worksheet at the end. And that's what I've tried to do with my website.
It's.
But
I
again,
think that's a really interesting point.
Mhm.
I mean, there are people go backwards and forwards on it. And in a world where everything has to be 140 characters or less, and you know that what the article is about just by looking at the tweet, um, we're maybe kind of pushing in the other direction on that one.
Perhaps. Well, you've got a whole generation of short attention span people, right? But sometimes you need a whole lot more than 140 characters to get your point across. One of the things I really like about Alex Osterwalder's work is the idea that you can put on one page the essence of your business idea, including, each of those 10 things are hypotheses that need to be proven. The business canvas model, of course, is brilliant, and Alex's new book that you introduced at Business of Software, right here on my desk.
Oh, cool.
With lots of post-it notes in it.
I think it's been translated into about 40 languages now, that book. By the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Apparently it has not yet been translated in the language of Kindle. Apparently they're having trouble figuring out how to get a book filled with graphics to go into a text ebook reader. But nonetheless, that's kind of the essence of what I was trying to do with Under 10 is, can we build a business with under 10 artifacts? With under 10 priorities, not so few as 140 characters, but 10 core documents or fewer. But back to is lean breaking product management? I think in many ways, lean is, as I said before, I think lean is a really good primer for product managers, being read by people who are not product managers. And that's great. I mean, you don't have to have a title to be a product manager. I think a lot of companies, the product manager is actually the lead developer. And of course, in a startup, the product manager is the CEO.
Yes, yes. We've got some questions coming in, Steve. There's one actually as a comment from Ruth Ivaimi Cook. I hope that's I've got her name right, saying, could we turn the background music down? But I don't see any music here. If there was music, I'd be dancing.
I'm not hearing any music.
If anyone else has got the same problem, could you let us know on the Q&A, and we will try and address it. But I'm getting lots of shaking heads here. So Ruth, it might be your radio. And let's try see if that gets it any better.
She probably has some website underneath this that decided that in addition to reading, you wanted to sing along with their website. If I wanted music, I don't want music on your website. And I'm amazed at the number of places I go where I'm sitting around and suddenly, bop, they've decided to play some video for me. But that's marketers being interruptive marketers rather than permission marketers.
Yeah, no, I agree. Someone's asked for your website. It's very easy to find. So that's Michael Chapman, and it's Under 10 Consulting. Ruth, thank you very much. You're doing a great job there of doing my job. There you go. You can click on that, and off you go. And most other people aren't hearing any music. So, what do you wish startups knew about product management?
Well, the thing I talked about earlier continues to bother me, I suppose, and that is how far people get into developing a product before they get any feedback. And the bad old days of waterfall, we would go 9 months to 18 months before we did any learning. And so what I think is brilliant about today's business metaphors is we want to start learning as quickly as possible. And that can be as simple as putting up a landing page and saying, would you like to hear more about my product idea? Leave your email address, and get some validation straight away. But I do find that a lot of technology companies are pretty far into fleshing out their idea before they embrace learning. And I think that's what really good product managers have done for 20 years. The other thing that I talk about with CEOs is the difference between a CEO and a product manager is a product manager writes stuff down.
couldn't possibly comment.
Your entire group is laughing at you now, aren't they?
They always are.
Right. So, there's a systematic process that we've learned in Lean or in value proposition design or in running Lean. But it involves, literally writing down your hypothesis and then testing it and validating that you're getting something from the market. But I'd say, oh, you know what? I just finished reading the book about Marissa Mayer at and the life of Yahoo.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what the book was called. It was like Yahoo and Marissa or something. But anyway, I walked away from that book with a feeling that Yahoo, and I haven't worked with Yahoo, so I don't know anything except what I've read. Yahoo seems to have been, I hate to say it this way, mismanaged by a lot of short-term thinking, by a lot of sales thinking. Here's a big client who wants a big thing, let's do that. And as I joke about with a lot of the companies I work with, for a sales guy, one customer visit is a completed research study.
Yes.
Right? So I do encounter companies that a sales guy talked to a big client, and suddenly it's a fire drill. We have to stop doing all the things that we had planned to go after this one super deal. And then, the next super deal comes along, and the next super deal comes along. I remember I was involved in a discussion a few years ago that said, now that we're all on the web, now that we're all SaaS products, we don't even need product managers. The product can measure itself. We can tell what people do. We can see, gosh, people do this thing more than they do that thing. So this thing must be the better thing. And you could get, feedback and all that stuff. But what automation lacks is an understanding of why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So just a couple of questions that we've got coming in that.
Yeah, don't take me down this Yahoo path. I just read the book. But the book is by Nicholas Carlson. It's Marissa Mayer and the Fight to Save Yahoo, and it's really a quite fascinating state of how Yahoo got to be where it is currently, and Marissa has her hands full.
Yes.
No, but the good news, and I think the reason I'm excited, I think a lot of people are excited about Marissa, is that she's got a data background and she's got a product background. And there aren't many CEOs that you see who have a strong understanding of the product piece. They come from sales, they come from finance, they come from development. But I'm delighted to see, and I hope she does well, I'm delighted to see a product person running a company.
Yes. And she also has the benefit of a share price that's underpinned by another company. So, so another question, Steve. When you talk about lean, are you meaning lean startup or lean and agile in general? And this is from a guy called Clark Ching, who was at Business Software Europe, but is also a product manager or product director in pretty big organization, actually.
Gotcha. Well, that's an interesting question. The language of our business today is really smushy. I, for instance, called on a client a couple of weeks ago in my workshops and consulting work. We were doing a multi-day thing, and they said, well, we've adopted Agile, and that doesn't actually mean anything. Agile is an umbrella term. It's like, hey, I've just gotten a computer. Right? Well, what kind of computer? What kind of Agile are you practicing? And you've got lean principles of monitoring and measuring waste, and the people close to the work are the best ones to know how to improve quality. You've got lean startup, which is Eric's stuff. You've got Scrum. You've got Safe. You've got XP. And frankly, what I'm encountering is most companies are doing all of those things. And personally, I think that's a good thing. I'm not a jihadist as it relates to Agile,
Yeah.
and many people are, and I know that, basketball was both a terrible movie and a terrible idea of combining all the sports together into one thing. But I find that companies are unique organisms, and developing a development method, a process that is unique to them, is pretty critical. And yet, for some in the specifically the Scrum community, they say, this is a religion. You have to practice it this way, as prescribed by the word from on high, and that presumes that everybody's got the same kind of business and the same kind of products. So when I talk about, in my head, I separate Lean and Lean Startup and Agile and Scrum. They're all specialized versions of the Agile community, I suppose. But there are brilliant principles espoused by each, and what I'm finding most often is that people are taking good ideas from all of those to build their own unique Agile implementation.
Yeah. Okay, that makes perfect sense. I think I've invited Clark to join us on the Hangout to come in and ask if he's got any more questions, but I'm not sure whether he's sitting listening to this in a very boring meeting and be found out. But here's another question. It's a great question. This is from Milan. I'm not even sure whether we should be saying her name, because she's considering an offer from a startup as head of marketing and product management, but they want me reporting to the COO, who believes that marketing is purely about sales leads rather than product management. Do you have any advice?
Well, I have struggled with the word marketing throughout my career. I majored in marketing in college, and I learned that marketing was the big strategic game. And then I went to work for a vendor and found out that marketing is where T-shirts come from. So for all those years I worked for Pragmatic Marketing, we were talking about marketing in the bigger sense. Marketing including product management, product marketing, as well as marcoms. And yet, in so many places, when I would talk about marketing, they would limit their thinking to color collateral and branding and advertising. So when I started Under 10 Consulting, I kind of ran away from the word marketing. The good news is I'm seeing more and more organizations where product management is reporting directly to the COO or to a chief product officer as a peer of sales and development. And I think that's good news. When product management is part of development, they tend to become developers and tend to be, for instance, one of the baggages I have with Scrum is the idea that the product manager needs to be available 24 hours a day to the dev team. And yet the dev team wants the product manager to also be up to date on the market conditions, specifically, customer feedback. So which is it? 24 hours a day sitting next to the developer, or some period of time sitting next to the customer? When I see product management in the marketing department, then they turn into the place where screenshots come from. So I really like the parity of having a VP of sales and a VP of product management and a VP of development, and then we'll have to talk about what is marketing. Is it the little marketing? Is it VP of marcoms? Is it VP of where color things come from? Or is it a strategic role? And I think the closer you get to California, the more likely product management is in development. And the closer you get to Boston, I think it's more likely that product management is its own function or is part of marketing, and then we define marketing as the bigger term, the one that's around strategy.
That's interesting. And you think that Boston is the way to go? Why do you think it's got so separated?
I think, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure Boston is necessarily the epicenter, except that, at least in the U.S., it seems that there's a dichotomy that happens somewhere in the middle of the country, and that Austin is closer to Silicon Valley spiritually than it is to Boston. But I think the thing in Boston, is those companies have been around for generations. They've been around for 10, 20, 30 years. And so I think they probably have, if you will, a little more discipline, classical discipline. Whereas Silicon Valley is filled with a lot of startups who, in many ways, have chosen to ignore history. We're starting over again, and so they say, you know what? All we need is a developer, right? We get a developer, and then we get our favorite frat boy from college who'll be our VP of sales because he knows how to buy beer, and that's the company, right? And then it takes them a few years before they realize that they're missing the product management discipline in the way they've been building products.
Yeah. Do you need to have, if you're a tech company, do you need to be around for decades? Most of the biggest ones that we see today haven't been. And maybe there isn't such a, and I don't think this is necessarily a good thing, but if you can create huge value in a business very quickly and sell, and everyone makes lots of money, that seems to be the sort of the narrative that Silicon Valley would have us all believe. You don't really need to have long-term vision, do you?
Well, it really has to do with exit strategy. I think many companies, and not just in Silicon Valley, the exit strategy is we're going to bump up our valuation during this wonderful artificial bubble that we're having, and then try to sell ourselves to the bigger fool before people figure out that we're not making any money. We've gone to eyeballs, and let's hope that we can do an acqui-hire, or that our technology can be acquired so that we can go off and do something else. I think the further away from California you get, the more you see companies who are saying, you know what, I'm in this for the long haul. I want to build a business that survives me, as opposed to, and that's what Yahoo's trying to do, right? Yahoo's trying to build a business that lasts forever. Google is a business that wants to last forever. I honestly think Tumblr was trying to build a business that would last forever. And the circumstances were that Yahoo came along and made them an offer they couldn't refuse. But I think there are a lot of companies that come in and say, how can we generate a market share without generating a lot of market value? So I'm in the business of building businesses as opposed to building exit strategies.
Cool.
And don't you think most people want to work? I don't know if this is true. Many of the people I know want to work for a company for a long time because they love the products and the markets they've chosen to serve. And then there are other people who are, if you will, more mercenary, who are saying, I'm just in it for the quick kill, and then I'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's an age thing. I think as people go through a cycle, the thing I slightly fear at the moment is there are going to be a lot of very unhappy, disillusioned and disappointed people who've been brought into the technology industry and into software industry, who haven't become multi-millionaires as a result of the exit. The Googles and Facebooks are very unusual, but they are they are the benchmark to which people sort of
Mhm.
aspire to, I guess,
Fair
and
enough.
that can lead to all sorts of things, from general disgruntlement to mental health issues to all sorts of things. If you're coming in to a business relatively late, you're getting lots of options, working really, really hard to make something happen. And even if the company has an exit, there are a lot of people that will leave that company with very little value at all.
Right. Well, it's one thing to be the 20th employee, and it's quite a different one to be the 2000th employee. Um, but in my experience, most of the people that I work with really love what they do. They love the company they're working for, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But let me circle way back, because I'm not sure we actually got to the question that was asked earlier. What do in looking at a startup situation where they're looking to bring in a VP of marketing, I think her question is a really good one. Is when you say marketing, what do you mean by marketing? Let's call out some of the activities or some of the KPIs or the success metrics for this particular job. And if the answer is, generating scads of leads and running our trade shows, then you've got the VP of Marcom position. If they're talking about, we want you to build a 5-year strategy, then that's a different kind of job. But I think the questions I would be asking about a startup scenario is, what does success look like for this particular role?
Yeah.
And by the way, my trick, my rule of thumb, if you will, for moving up and down companies is you go to a startup for a title and a hope for an exit, and probably not money. So you go down company to get a bigger title. You go up company to get bigger money.
Yeah. That's
Maybe worth taking the job of VP of marketing for the purpose of having VP of marketing on your resume, and then you can go to a more mature company and say, I'm a VP of marketing, and they go, oh, well, this is the package we have for VPs of marketing, which is, twice what you were making at the startup.
Yes. Although, I think then the counter argument to that, and I'm not convinced that it's necessarily true. It certainly isn't always, but it's certainly the one that the venture capital community and the angel community will want to put out, and they have money and money talks, is that the opportunity for not just reward but promotion and growth within a small startup is huge, and
oh, true.
That's why I think I think this sort of concept that startups are a young person's game has something. There's something in that. They are a young person's game. People will either succeed or fail, not necessarily on the back of their own efforts either. But with a bit of experience, you probably want a little bit more reward and a little bit more predictable growth, wealth.
Right. Well, this is one of the things I've jumped like 3 steps ahead from what you were saying. One of the things that's wonderful about Scrum is the idea that everybody on the team is willing to pitch in wherever they need to. Instead of saying, oh, you can only do code, and you can only do UX, and you can only do testing. In Scrum, it's like, what? We've got 5 to 7 people who are really good at what they do, and we do what needs doing. And it's a very startup-y sort of culture in a Scrum team, and should be. And some people like that, and I think that's how you can have kind of a startup feel in an established company. But there are other people who say, what, I kind of like having walls. I like knowing that I'm building on a particular specialty. And the more you like structure, I think the more you would like a larger company than a startup. If 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 you like anarchy, then a startup is for you.
I think that's a great point. Now, my screen is frozen, but I think we're still talking and I can still hear you. The only thing I can't do is do much to control the Q&A stuff, but our
Well, I
trusty
see me
colleagues.
moving and talking and hearing you moving and talking.
Cool. So Alan Tanza has another question. Steve, your pragmatic marketing course transformed my career 10 years ago. She doesn't say whether that's a good thing. It was before Lean and Agile were popular. In your opinion, who owns the roadmap to the future now? Which is a great question.
That is a great question. I think absolutely product management owns the roadmap. I'm really enamored with Scrumban, which says, here's an enormous queue of things that need to be done, and it's getting ever larger. But it's in the world of Scrum, where the dev team is really looking at what's going on over the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Somebody has to be looking at next year. And I hope, well, I'm working with a company whose name I won't mention. Their executive team seems to have completely abdicated responsibility for vision. And so the product teams are trying to...
Why wouldn't you mention them?
Yeah.
Are they a public company?
Anyway, and so they've said to product management, what's your strategy? And I would think that the product management role would be to help the executive team articulate the strategy rather than coming up with one from scratch. But nonetheless, I think we're seeing now, a few generations in, we're seeing companies who have adopted Agile are getting architectural debt because they weren't thinking very far out. I had a wonderful conversation a couple of months ago, with a dev lead. Let me start over. The product manager said, we can't seem to write user stories right because developers don't like them. So I went to the developers and I said, what's your baggage? And they said, well, product managers don't know how to write user stories. And I went, okay, fine. I can't handle this anymore. Let's put all of you guys in the room. So I put product management in the room and development in the room, and I said, we're going to stay here until you two agree about how specific to be in user stories. Well, then 2 men walked in the room who frankly seemed too old to be developers. And, there are a lot of people who are old developers, don't get me wrong, but these guys, had suits on. So you figure they're not, they don't know how to work, right? So I turned to them and I said, who are you? And one of them said, well, I'm the CIO, and the other one said, I'm the CTO. And I said, wow, I think you're probably in the wrong meeting, because we're here talking about granularity of user stories. I mean, we are way down in the guts here. And they said, you know what? We're good with your user stories. They're fine. What we don't have is a 3-year roadmap. We don't know what you product managers have planned, and we're mad about it because we want to see, where are you going? What are we going to be delivering next year and the year after that? Even if we're not actually going to do it, we'd like to see where you think we're going. And in a very specific example, they said last year we developed 2 identical features with 2 different dev teams on 2 different products. If we had known the portfolio roadmap, we would have seen that we've got multiple teams working on the same thing. And so in my world, a product manager, and maybe that's a VP of product management or a director of product management or a portfolio manager, is looking at, given what we know today, given the markets that we've chosen to serve, and given the assets that we have as a company, this is what we can realistically accomplish over the next 3 years, knowing that anything beyond, say, the next 6 months is very vague we may adjust our plans based on new realities. And this is an area that salespeople have great difficulty because they want the roadmap to be a straight commitment. We guarantee that we're going to deliver this feature 3 years from now. And I like to say, you know what? I can give you that level of information if you agree to never change it. If you want me to commit to 3 years, I can do it. But I can't then change my plans. And they're like, oh, no, we need you to change your plans. We also need you to commit to this plan. We need both. And I'm like, well, you know what? Let's do that with your pipeline. I'd like to see your pipeline for 2 years from now. And they're like, I don't know what my pipeline is for this quarter. What are you talking about? Yeah. But in the end, I think that what I see in successful companies is really two things. One is product management taking on a lot of the responsibilities that the president formerly had in terms of product strategy. Mm-hmm. But I also see, and I don't emphasize this enough, I see a successful organization as one truly where the teams work together, where sales and marketing and product management and development are working together for a common goal. A fairly common question I get is people say, can you give me an example of a company that has succeeded with product management? And the answer is almost always any company where all the teams are working together will be successful. And the companies where product management is the only one in charge, or where sales is only the one in charge, or development is in charge, when these teams are working against one another, that's where you see the big flameouts.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm very lucky to sit in these very nice offices. This is the Redgate campus on the business park in Cambridge, and I think they've taken a lot of those ideas on board. I mean, to the extent that the sales teams don't work on commission, and I see a lot of kind of collaboration. And yes, of course, there is a dev area where people don't have shoes, and there's a sort of a sales area, but there's not, it's not that kind of adversarial sales approach that I see with so many kind of, in particular, the kind of enterprise software companies.
Agree. And the analogy I like to use in my workshops is the raft. If you've ever gone whitewater rafting, I took my kids and my nephews whitewater rafting a couple of years ago, and it was so funny. My two nephews were in the front of the raft, and they thought they were steering. And they were paddling maniacally, trying to go over there. And I was sitting in the back next to the guide, figuring the guide is not going in the water. So sitting near him was a good thing. And he and I were just laughing maniacally as we watched my two nephews, and I just thought instantly, this is sales and development. One group is trying to go that way, one group is trying to go the other way, and we need somebody in the back of the raft with a vision of where we're trying to go, because that's the one who steers.
Yeah, but ultimately, if there's no stream, you're not going to go anywhere. So choose a river with a decent stream, I think.
Yeah.
So Clark Ching actually came back. He is in the meeting, so can't join us actually on the video. But he said, I'm the Agile leader at a big financial organization. I like how you're not prescriptive around Agile. But if Agile were your product, how would you sell it so it sticks? And I'm assuming that that's selling it internally within the organization.
Yeah, well, actually, let me answer what I thought the question was first. One of the things that's wonderful in terms of marketing Agile is they've introduced a set of principles that are pretty nicely codified and are being updated frequently, and they've turned the community loose. So in terms of, say, Scrum, there's tens of thousands of Scrum experts who have embraced the principles and learned the mechanics, and can start their own businesses helping teams with their coaching. And I think in many ways that's why Agile has become so pervasive so quickly, because they've got 1,000 people telling their story. It's like they crowdsourced their channel. I think Dean Leffingwell is doing a wonderful job with that as well, with his SAFE concept, the Scaled Agile Framework, which is let 1,000 flowers bloom. You know, instead of him having to develop a channel and develop a services offering, he's opened it up to anybody who is certified can offer courses, and he'll promote them through his channel. So I think the old school days of we have to have a sales channel and we have to have a development group and we have to have a marketing team. I think Agile has really done a good job of crowdsourcing. But as it relates specifically to Agile within an organization, I think the challenge inside an organization, well, let me do it this way. Agile allows us to change our minds. Agile allows us to be responsive to the changing market or our changing understanding of the market. I think in the short term, Agile is less about time to market and more about quality. That we spend less time working on things that don't matter. And because of the instant feedback we get, we're able to say, you know what, I worked for 2 weeks, here's something I've got, let me show it to some customers and get some feedback before we start adding more and more and more to this. Whereas the old days was, we started by guessing what the market wanted. And then worked on for 9 to 18 months on that hypothesis, and then we delivered it to the market, and the instant feedback was, you've missed the boat. So I think in many ways Agile methods were created because of bad management, either bad product management or bad executive management. And so we're like, you know what, it's clear you don't know what you want. So I'll tell you what, I'll work for 2 weeks, I'll show you what I got. If you say that's right, then we'll keep going. Because a lot of times it feels like the executive team has said, bring me a cup. Bring me a cup. Okay, here's a cup. Well, not that cup. Bring me another cup.
Yeah.
But if you need a story to tell, you can go back to the Business of Software website and look for my speech, which is posted online. And my first story is my story about my the KitchenAid mixer that I used to kick off that particular talk. And I think it's a brilliant way of articulating the value of Agile, which is we can respond to changing conditions in the marketplace in a much more responsive way than we were able to do without Agile.
Great, thank you. We're going to round it up fairly shortly, but one of the things that I really wanted to ask you about, and I'm sorry we didn't talk at Boss about this, is there's a massive sort of assumption, there's a sort of a generally agreed state of affairs in Europe that we don't have product managers, and that all the great product managers are on the West Coast. Is that something you would sign up to? I mean, I get the sense probably not, but I mean, give us some sort of hope in Europe, and what can we do to get product management taken more seriously in the right sort of businesses? And are we pushing the right people into, or pulling the right people into the into a career there?
I find that a surprising statement. Just last week, I was in Dublin working with the master's program in product management. there are very few. I can only think of one in the U.S. where you can get a master's degree in product management, and yet in Dublin we have that. In in London, we have Mind the Product. You have conferences across Europe that are well attended, and so I don't see that product management difference between Europe and the U.S. What I do see is for some of the more established companies, many of the companies that I work with, their European operations are merely sales channels for American products.
Yeah,
and so
that's very fair.
right, so I sometimes encounter situations where they say, we'd really like to understand the role of product management, but we take whatever products America gives us, and our real job is to promote them here locally. So in that case, many of the product managers are what I would actually call a product marketing manager or a market owner. And I think that's particularly true everywhere now that we're sending, our code elsewhere. But what I find really resonates with people outside the U.S. and increasingly in the U.S. is if the U.S.-based companies want to be successful outside the U.S., then they have to have product managers outside the U.S. In general, what we do is we say, we're going to build a product for the United States, and at the last second, we will allow you to change the $ symbol to a euro symbol, and that way we can go to Europe. Because after all,
tidy up the spelling.
Yeah, exactly. England is basically, America, except that you misspell a lot of words, right?
Mm.
and then we take our product. Yeah, and then we take our product to India because that's, they basically all speak English, right? And then we take it to Australia because they speak some form of English,
Yeah.
And our orientation is around everybody is or wants to be the United States.
Yeah.
But if we really want to build a product for India that meets the needs of India, then we're going to need product managers in India who can articulate the requirements that are unique to that country or to that region. And the same is true for every country we want to visit. We want to be a real partner in that country. Then we need product managers in that country who can articulate back to wherever product management and development may sit, here are the requirements that are special for my country. And in terms of corporate management, the executive team needs to say, we are really passionate about bringing a product to the UK, so we're going to allocate a fixed percentage of our development spend on the requirements for the UK, instead of saying, well, the UK gets what they want when the US is done, because that never happens.
Yeah.
So that's one of the techniques I use when working with leadership teams is to say, how much do you really care? Show me with your money. We're going to allocate development spend by your priorities for geographic markets.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. One question to round up here, Steve, and this is from Ruth. She says, while the discussion has been interesting, the question, have we leaned too far, doesn't seem to have been answered. Can you say anything to that? Have we leaned too far?
That's a nice wrap up, isn't it? My concern with lean startup is that it seems to have thrown out the good with the bad. It seems to say we don't need product managers, we just need somebody to do customer discovery. Another way of saying have we leaned too far, in my point of view, is has Agile broken product management? Do we really need product management in an Agile world? And I believe the answer is yes. And I believe some companies have gone
Do you
so.
believe Agile has broken product management?
I think in many cases, Agile has broken product management by making product managers and perhaps all of us much more focused on the short term, much more focused on individual capabilities in the product, and we have therefore, leaned away, if you will, from any sort of structured planning. I hear people say, we don't need a long-term plan. We just need to think 2 weeks out. And I think for companies that have embraced lean in that context, then yeah, we've leaned too far.
Yeah.
I think many companies are wisely taking the lean startup principles and saying, you know what, we can apply this to our business, whether it's a startup or an established company, of embracing embracing the idea that many of these things are hypotheses that need to be tested. Whether they're done by product management or someone else is irrelevant. But my real concern with, have we leaned too far, is we've leaned away from the market and more towards a focus on the technology. Let's build technology and find people who need it, as opposed to let's find people who have problems that we are qualified to solve and then build technology to do so.
Cool. I think that's a really great way to wrap up. Always fun talking to you. Always learn a huge amount. I don't know how I'm going to stop this broadcast because, as I said about half an hour ago, the screen's frozen. So I'm sure we'll find a way, and we'll put this up and raise some of the questions and answers on the blog post. But thank you so much to Steve Johnson from Under 10 Consulting. Do you want to put up your website again on the Q&A screen, Steve? I can't touch it from here, but you should, because people can get to your blog there.
Right, at under10consulting.com. You can click on my blog, and there's also on the speaking page a little snippet from my speech at Business of Software this year, with a link to the full presentation on the Business of Software site.
Awesome, and we'll have we'll put the Hangout on YouTube, so that we can look at it there. Really appreciate your time. We have Hangouts coming up from Rand Fishkin and Bill Owlett, who spoke at Business Software USA, and some also coming up from the European one as well. Business Software Conference Europe is the 24th and 25th of June in Cambridge, England, or real Cambridge as we call it over here. Business Software USA is in September 15th to the 17th in New Cambridge, or Boston as we call it. Thoroughly recommend a trip to both. There won't be overlap in speakers, but I think a lot of the things that you were saying today about people taking a longer term view and being a little bit more measured and grown up about creating long-term value are very core things to the audience in both events. So really appreciate your time, Steve, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
A pleasure talking with you. Bye now.
Bye.